In this video, we'll learn how to use filters here inside of MARI. Alright, great. So I still have our dagger visible here. Now I went ahead and used the paint through tool to paint that metallic image onto the blade that we looked at in the previous video. So if I were to come over and just look at flat lighting for the blade, you can see it does have that texture applied. Now, I like the texture on here, but I feel like there's a little bit too much contrast between the light areas in this metal texture and the dark areas. So one way that we could fix this is with a filter here inside of MARI. So looking at my layer stack over here, I have both of these bits of information on the dirt and scratches layer here inside the metal detail layer group. Now, one word of caution, there's actually much more data on this layer than just the dagger. There's actually all of the armor, any metal surface that I painted dirt or scratches for, all that data is on this particular layer. So, but for this particular video, I think it'll work fine. I do want to give you one word of caution, though, with regard to filters inside of MARI. So filters are what's referred to in this industry as a destructive way of making a change to a texture, because you can't go back in and repair that filter unless you go back through MARI's history palette. Now, we have the ability to make this kind of a change using an adjustment layer, and we learned how to use those in a previous video. However, there is a lot of overlap between some of the available adjustment layers that we have here, and if we look up here under the filters menu, some of the filters that are available to us. There are things here inside of this menu like invert, luminosity, brightness, contrast, levels. All these have an adjustment layer equivalent over here. Now, I'm a big fan of using non-destructive workflows when I'm making changes like this, so I would probably lean towards using an adjustment layer if there was one. But there are some filters here that just don't exist in terms of adjustment layers. Things like a blur. You can see there are 3 different blur filters here. So if we wanted to use one of those blur filters, let's say a Gaussian blur, we can go ahead and bring that filter up here. But we just need to be aware that in using that, it is going to blur every pixel on this layer, and we're not going to be able to repair that if we ever decide, well, I wish I hadn't blurred those pixels. So we'll go ahead and wait for MARI to load that filter dialog up here, and there it comes. So the filters are going to all work in a separate dialog window like this. Now, each filter should have a preset option that's available to you. You can see here that if I click that little down arrow, there are no presets currently because I haven't made any. But we could come in here and we could make changes to some of the options for a filter, and we could click this plus sign to make a preset. Maybe it's a set of options that we're going to use over and over and over again. We could come in and make a preset and then just choose that preset from this drop down. With it not necessarily being that type of a situation, I'm going to come in here and just make some changes to these options. Now, the first thing we should pay attention to is the Apply To area of this dialog. Every filter will have this. And we also have the ability to turn on or off the preview. So this is a good thing to leave on so you can see what's going on the canvas behind this dialog. Current paint target, again, means what we currently have selected. In this case, I have this layer selected, so that paint target is what will be blurred. We have other options here we'll look at here in just a moment. But let's come in here and take a look. We'll just kind of come in here and start to do some changes here. We'll increase the radius, and you can start to see we're definitely blurring that texture out some here. If that's the look we were going for, we have definitely done that. So with this particular filter, again, it is affecting every pixel on this layer. And I mentioned that this contains all the dirt and scratches for every metal surface on this project, which means the armor on the boots, the armor on her left arm, I believe, the belt buckles, any metal surface. It's all on here. So a good idea, instead of using current paint target, would be to potentially either use this mask. Now, the mask option allows you to come in and mask by a channel. So if we created a channel with black information in it, and the only thing that was white in that channel was the dagger, we could come in here and choose a channel and use that as a mask. I have not done that, and we don't have the option to do that from this dialog. So rather than do that, I'm just going to cancel this out, and I'm going to show you the rest of the asset. So let me just come over here and show all. And I did this so you can see that the only thing I have selected right now is the patch that has the dagger on it. So with that done, let me just go ahead and hide the unselected again. With that done, we could actually come over here to filters. Let's just go back to our Gaussian blur. And instead of choosing the current paint target, we could choose selected patches of the current paint target. And this way, the only pixels on this layer that'll be blurred are the ones for the selected patch. In this case, it would be the dagger. So that's one way we could solve this problem. Another way would be with that mask that I mentioned. And it would take a few moments to create a new channel and get it set up properly, but that's another way we could solve this issue. Now, there's a couple of other options here. Current painting, just as when we were looking at the clone stamp, current painting indicates whatever is currently in the paint buffer. So if I had painted this texture into my paint buffer and had yet to bake it down onto the layer, we could come in here and use a Gaussian blur and apply it to the current painting. And lastly, we have an option here for selected images. This works a little differently. I'm going to go ahead and cancel this dialog out because selected images refers to images that you have in here. So if I came in here and selected this dragon image, remember this guy, we looked at him in a previous video. It's kind of that dragon tattoo. We could go ahead and click on that image, make sure there's a blue outline around it. We could come over to Filters, Blur, Gaussian, and we could change the Apply to Selected Images. And I'm going to go ahead and give it a pretty substantial blur here. We'll go ahead and give it, maybe around 25. We'll go ahead and cancel that. So there we go. 25 is set, and we'll go ahead and apply. Now look what happened when we had that image selected here. Mari's created a second image for us here inside the image manager. So in the case of an image, it's not destroying the original image. It is making a copy, and you can see it has indeed blurred that image out. But in the case of using filters on either paint that's in the buffer or current paint target in terms of a layer, this will be a destructive change. So feel free to come through here and take a look at some of these different filters here. There are a ton of them. Many of them, again, have overlap inside of the adjustment layers here. And again, I would encourage you, when there is overlap, use an adjustment layer. It'll allow you to go back at a later date and be much easier to undo the changes you make with that type of an action. All right, great. So in this video, we've learned about filters here inside of MARI.